Reports from 466 out of 504 voting stations tracked via the app indicated overall compliance. There were no major issues of disruption or intimidation or violence at voting stations. At the remainder of the voting stations, issues flagged related to voter management devices not working, stations running out of ballots, lengthy queues that sometimes resulted in tempers flaring, voters who had not changed their residential addresses nor filed a Section 24A application, power outages at voting stations in the south of Johannesburg, and isolated incidences of political tension. Yet despite these administrative issues, observers indicate that voting had gone off smoothly and that all went well. Defend Our Democracy's observer reports complement the Human Science Research Council's election satisfaction survey, which found that despite the technical issues, 92% of voters felt that the elections were free and fair. This was underpinned by a prevailing sense that there was freedom to make political choices without any form of force, or pressure, or intimidation. Furthermore, throughout the electoral period, Defend Our Democracy has communicated with fellow observer organizations whose initial reports similarly reflect that the overall integrity of the elections has been maintained. We do, however, believe there is room for improvement. Issues related to voter management devices must be sorted out by the IEC once and for all. Voters should not have to wait hours to cast their ballots. Voter education, especially around changing one's residential address in order to vote, or details around the Section 24A application. All this needed to have been conducted more extensively. IEC staff must be better prepared to deal with all kinds of scenarios at the voting stations. We call on the IEC and Electoral Court to investigate and swiftly resolve the disputes that are lodged by political parties and independent candidates where there is credible evidence. We also call on the IEC to thoroughly investigate and account for why its leaderboard system malfunctioned. The leaderboard system allows for real-time transparency of the result, and it is fair to have expected the IEC to prioritize the proper functioning of technical systems in this regard. Once the results are finalized, we call on all political parties and independent candidates and all South Africans to accept the outcome of the elections. This is what political contestation in our constitutional democracy demands. We also urge the security cluster to be on alert for any potential disruptions or forms of destabilization. The period that follows the announcement of the electoral results requires political maturity and exemplary leadership. While at all times political parties should place the interests of the people first, this moment truly requires this particular principle to underpin decision-making. As coalition discussions potentially get underway, political parties must make decisions that are guided by a sound policy framework that will benefit all who live in South Africa. It should not be about political parties negotiating who gets what part of the pie. Coalition making needs to be collaborative and inclusive and to enjoy broader societal support. It should entail active engagement with civil society and other sectors throughout the process. Defend Our Democracy thanks all observers who registered to be part of the Election Watch campaign. It extends special gratitude to the 80 organizations who supported this campaign and fielded observers. Election observers responded to the call to be active citizens We hope that this can be translated into citizen accountability work as new administrations are established at national and provincial levels. As we continue our work of safeguarding democracy, we need to interrogate the reasons for the declining number of voters and those registering to vote. This trend must be reversed in the interest of democracy in the long term. Defend Our Democracy will be preparing a more detailed election observer report, which will be shared with the IEC and be made publicly available to help improve the way in which future elections are run. And this statement is endorsed by the following organizations, civil society organizations: Active Citizens Movement, Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, Be the Future Foundation, Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, Council of African Independent Churches, Freedom Under Law, the Gandhi Development Trust, Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia, Lawyers for Human Rights, Legal Resources Center, Lens Politics, Muslim Students Association Union, Msunduzi Association of Residents, Ratepayers and Civics, Muslim Youth Movement, My Vote Counts, NCDF, Public Affairs Research Institute, Strategic Dialogue Group, the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation, Klo Chulu Foundation, Wattville Community Action Network. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Reverend Moss. I'm going to ask Andre Sibanyoni to come in and go through snippets from statements that have been released by Groundwork Collective, Activate, Msunduzi Residents Association, Groundwork Collective, Democracy Development Program, KSAC, and SAFTO. Do you want to grab a chair maybe? And okay, just Activate is here, so they'll go through their statement.
Good afternoon, colleagues. This is a statement from Groundwork Collective, and it reads as follows. Working with other civil society organizations like Defend Our Democracy and the Development Democracy Program throughout the preparation stages for the election, we were able to adequately deploy observers across South Africa to ensure greater coverage. There were many administrative issues logged by our own observers regarding stations not open on time, network issues, VMD scanners not working, Section 24A confusion, shortages of some resources. This must be improved on going forward, and Groundwork Collective is committed to sharing its first report with the IEC so that it can help to show where the system could be more efficient. GWC did observation missions both abroad and locally, and in both instances, our observation was that the electoral conduct was free and fair, and South Africans were able to cast their vote and exercise their choice free from intimidation. So I'll be taking another statement from a different affiliate. Yeah, this is a a snippet from Msunduzi Association of Residents, Ratepayers and Civics. On behalf of Msunduzi Association of Residents, Ratepayers and Civics, as election observers, we hereby declare the 2024 national and provincial election free and fair. We call on all South Africans to stand by us and support our declaration for elections. These elections had the element of open and frank discussions, debates on all issues by all political parties, and were made possible for all to use their democratic right to vote. This snippet comes from SAFTU. The South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAFTU, urges South Africans to reject any attempt to nullify the electoral outcome and delegitimize the IEC work. This one is from the Democracy Development Program. In the light of developments relating to objections, we are proud of the degree of transparency exercised in the South African elections, as various shareholders with an interest in the outcome could engage various mechanisms to lodge disputes and seek clarity on issues which may have caused some tension. This is the last one from KSEC. With the tallying of votes being finalized, the Council encourages all political parties and independent candidates with objection to any part of the electoral process to utilize the available avenues and await the resolution of those objections and complaints through the IEC formal processes, and to refrain from questioning IEC's integrity. I thank you.
Thanks, Greg. I'm going to ask that the mic stay there just so that we can get Activate to share their statement. So this is Activate Change Drivers, who are also election observers.
Thank you. So we are Activate Change Drivers, a youth network. We would like to thank young people and communities that heeded the national call to participate in the 2024 general elections. This in spite of the anticipated much lower turnout. I mean, we can safely say that 16 million is not a bad turnout for such a contentious election. Of course, noting that it can always and should be better. It must be noted that the process of voting does not begin with elections, and it is incumbent upon all collective members and stakeholders within the voting process, which includes civil society, the government, and the IEC, as it were, to play a much more consistent role in ensuring that no young person or citizen is left out of the voting process. I think we can safely say that this election was not without its challenges. As a network, we had over 100 young observers present in the marginalized corners of South Africa. And some notable outcomes are projected through the various voting districts. We have to reflect on the information shared by the IEC regarding the significant changes made with regards to the Section 24 as well as the third ballot. Our findings are that this information did not reach a significant portion of young people across the country. And to find ways to ensure that we safeguard their participation and access to voting, as well as the implications that this has had on the voting process. There must be a way forward-thinking conversation and steps that need to be taken to improve our electoral processes, which includes the strengthened training of presiding officers and election staff, as it were. We encourage members of society, having said that, to spread to avoid the spread of misinformation and fake news on the democratic process, as we're finding ourselves in a contentious and very precarious point of these elections, but also the democratic transition as a country. And to say that to those who do have disputes and challenges, to use the right channels to ensure that any errors or unethical actions are indeed dealt with swiftly by the IEC. But having said that, as a member of a much larger, broader civil society group, we did find that these elections, predominantly in the main, were free and fair, and not without issues. And of course, we hope that there aren't any significant issues that might hinder the outcome and the results that will be shared this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Teboho. I'm going to open up now for questions, if there are any. Please feel free to go ahead.
Junior Humalo from Newsroom Africa. It's not directed towards anyone in particular, but I'm guessing just as civil society, as observers of these elections, I just wanted to get your thoughts on, yesterday we did hear the IEC indicate that there were about 579 disputes and they were still rising. Do you think that's enough time between yesterday and today to have resolved all of these issues and to declare the elections? Why does it feel like there is a rush to declare the elections when the IEC has about 7 days to declare the elections? And when you say broadly these elections were free and fair, what exactly do you mean? Because it's unclear. Were they free or fair? Did enough South Africans get the opportunity to go to the polls? Just that for me.
Thanks for that. Are there any other questions?
I just have a question about this section 24A and the education. Sorry, Theodore Mashele, ENCA. Is there any advice that you will be giving to the IEC regarding educating more people about the election process and the updates about it? Being on the ground most of the time, I found that many people were turned back because they did not know that they need to vote where they registered, and that was quite a problem. So will there be any advice, and what kind of advice would you give the IEC in order to share more information effectively?
Thanks for that.
Valentine Center for SABC News. There are allegations emerging that people were turned back even though they've gone to the correct voting station. Some who had knocked off after working a day's work in retail could not cast their votes because, the IEC officials wanted to knock off early. The gates were closed. Before people could cast their votes, we saw a situation in Togoza where voters fought for their right to vote. And many of the times I shudder to think about how many of these instances do we have where the media was not present to monitor and ensure that the gates are not closed on people and people are not prevented the right to vote. So maybe the closing time and the conduct of IEC officials.
Thanks for that.
Can we go first?
Okay.
Back into the daily map, but just on the section 24A as well. As my colleague said over here, people were turned away, and it might be too early to speculate on the effect that it had on voter turnout. But is the the confusion around it and the discrepancies in how section 24A was applied in different voting stations, do you think, or from your observations, did that have an effect on voter turnout? Was it
On section 24, and I think hopefully I can answer all of them all at once.
Beautifully described. Very powerful principle.
I can see your son. He's very tall.
He's not even tall,
You like as tall as a house.
Ask what size that you put on.
What size shoe do you wear? 15. There's a size 15.
Yeah.
The special shoe, special size.
Tata take your way there.
There's a size 15.
Yeah.
I thought it stops at 11.
But that's
Oh,
why
there's
it's
nothing
special.
wrong.
But you can't just find it anywhere.
You can't find it anywhere.